Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Keep the Line Moving podcast. I am your host, Chris Gargano, the podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. We have a guest for you this week, former NFL and college head coach, Herm Edwards. He's currently working on ESPN. That's where you see him all the time, talking about college football and the NFL. But let's look at his leadership career. He was an assistant coach for many years in college and the pros. Then he got his first head coaching job with the New York Jets in 2001. He then went to the Kansas City Chiefs for a few years and then on to Arizona State. I'll tell you what, his leadership philosophy and principles and the way he carries himself as a leader is worth your time. So you're in the right spot. I'll give you one nugget that is part of this conversation. He never missed a game in high school, college, or the NFL. That alone is his commitment. That alone and more is this conversation. We go to Herm Edwards. All right, Coach Edwards, it's so very nice to have you. I'm very appreciative of your time. And I got to say, that's might be the best backdrop I've seen out of any of our guests so far. So I give you that honor, Coach. That's wonderful.
Well, my office, and obviously when you're in the game, as long as I've been in the game at every level, it's your history. And that's one thing you learn about being an athlete or anything you do in life, but especially in sports. Football's become a part of your history. Hopefully the ones behind me are it's good history. There's been some not so good either, but you don't collect those. You collect the ones that have good history from college, obviously, to high school. You go all the way back, and into professional football. So I've been very fortunate, been on a lot of good teams, had a lot of good coaches along the way that mentored me. And I'm a guy that's always trying to give back to the game of football because it's meant so much to me.
Well said. And we can all, for those of us that have followed you throughout your career, that is definitely a true statement and a great life goal. Coach, let's back up. Tell us about your upbringing and some of your foundational moments as a child that, made you really love the game.
Well, I think when you first get involved in athletics, you get it from for me, it was on television. I can remember when we got our first television, it was black and white. And I watched this movie, Jim Thorpe, the All-American. Burt Lancaster was Jim Thorpe. Here again, I was probably about 10 years old, and you're in elementary school then. And I watched this movie, and it was very compelling to me as a young age on what this man, Jim Thorpe, after you read his book and you read his history, what he had accomplished and where he had come from. And it was very inspirational for me as a young guy. It really changed my whole mindset of trying to be an athlete and play every sport. And basically when I grew up, in today's world, a lot of guys just concentrate on one sport. I was anything that had a ball in it, I was going to play. And that kind of drove me right there. And from there, you get in junior high school, then you go to high school. I was bused from the neighborhood that I lived in to a predominantly white high school. This is in 1968. The desegregation program was implemented by President Johnson. And so I was bused. And went to a high school that had a great football coach. His name was Dan Albert. And I still talk to him today. He's 92 years old. He was actually my first, what I call tackle football coach. There was no Pop Warner when I played. There was no tackle football. It was flag, or you go in the park and you just kind of play tackle on your own with the guys. And so he taught me the game of football. From the 10th grade, we went 10, 11, 12. I was fortunate enough to be a pretty good athlete. And I was on the varsity team as a 10th grader. But I played baseball, I played basketball, I did them all, but I was kind of driven to football at the end. It was kind of my passion. I was a big Dallas Cowboy fan growing up. I liked Tom Landry, and my favorite player was Bob Hayes, so I wore number 22. And had everybody call me Mr. Bob. That was my name in high school. It was Mr. Bob. And basically, I was a pretty good athlete in all sports. Football, basketball, and baseball, ran some track as well. But I kept coming back to football. I figured that was my way to basically earn a scholarship and go on to college, because my parents, they couldn't afford for me to go to college. I mean, they couldn't pay tuition. I just figured, well, I'm going to be an athlete. And I set my goals. And my goals was to play pro football. And not only pro football, but for the Dallas Cowboys. Well, that didn't work out real good because I ended up playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. And when you're an Eagle, you can't like the Cowboys. You learn that after your rookie year. But one thing leads to another, obviously. And then I was fortunate enough, went to a couple colleges, went to Cal right as a freshman and played, and then got into a dissertation with a coach. And this kind of almost set my wheels spinning of when I got out of playing sports, I was going to be a coach. Because back in, 72, when I was in college my freshman year, you couldn't ask a coach why. They told you what to do. They told you how to do it. And if they told you why, that was the end of it. Why was the last part of the conversation? Well, I wanted to know why in the beginning. Why are we doing this? Because I was trying to obviously figure out why we were doing it, but also the knowledge. When you're a coach or a leader, your number one job is you're an information provider. You provide knowledge. So I'm asking him, why are we doing this drill that I thought didn't apply to the position we were playing? So I was kind of a little bit of a smart aleck. And we got in this confrontation. And so I leave after my sophomore year. And I ended up going to JC, to the local JC here, MPC. I played for basically one season, a semester, became an All-American, led the country in interceptions. But I had to get an AA if I was going to go somewhere else. So Cal came back and recruited me all over. They moved the position coach to a linebacker coach, and they brought in a new coach, a great coach. His name was Lou Erber. And not that the other coach was a bad coach. It's just we had a personality clash. It didn't mix. And so I played my junior year and had a really good year. Was up for All-American, was a Pac-8 player. It was a Pac-8 then. It wasn't the Pac-12 like it is now, or the Pac-10 before it became 12. And then from there, to my junior year, the coach that was coaching me leaves and goes to the 49ers. And guess what? They bring back the linebacker coach. And so in spring football, he becomes the coach. And after about the first practice, I pack my car up and I'm gone. I travel south to San Diego State. That was the JC school and the double transfer school at that time. So I go to San Diego State. Claude Gilbert is the head coach. I go down there. I have to redshirt my first year. They don't have any scholarships. So I was in school and I worked in the shipyard at night because I wasn't on scholarship for the first semester. And then they put me on scholarship in the spring. The season comes, I playing a couple all-star games. The draft then, I believe, was 12 rounds. I'm slated to probably get drafted in the second round, somewhere right around there. And I don't get drafted. And after about the fifth round, I pick up my phone and I call the operator to make sure the phone's working. She calls me back. I say, well, the phone's working. So I wait there. I don't get drafted. There's some teams that call. And obviously, I go to Miami Dolphins, was the first teams I go to for minicamp. And I go down there and John Shula was the coach, great man. And I practiced for 2 days, but I didn't sign the contract. And Bobby Beathard is there, and they're trying to tell me, why don't you sign this contract? I said, well, I promised Philadelphia. And the reason Philadelphia came about, because Dick Vermeil recruited me out of high school to come to UCLA, and I ended up going to Cal. Dick's now the coach there, and he says, don't sign a contract. We want you to come to Philadelphia and work out. We want you here as an Eagle. And so I have to go in the office to meet with Don Shula, and I'm scared to death. I'm going in there to meet Coach Shula. And he's saying, look, we really want you to sign this letter because once you make your Dolphin, you're going to have an excellent opportunity. And I said, Coach, if you really want to be a Dolphin, why didn't you draft me? So he kind of looked at me. And so I don't sign, and I get on an airplane and travel from Miami all the way back to LA. And then, I get to LA, Carl Peterson, who's the GM, he's waiting for me in LA. And now I get on another plane and go to Philadelphia. And I work out, and I get there and work out for 2 days, and I end up signing with the Eagles. And from there, it's kind of history. I start as a rookie, played in every preseason game. They told me you're going to have to play in every preseason game. You're going to play until third quarter. We got to get you ready to play. And I can remember Dick in training camp after the first preseason game. He tells me, did you call your mom? And I looked at him. I said, at that time, there was 125 guys in training camp. There was 6 preseason games. People don't realize that. There was only 28 teams in the NFL then. And after the first preseason game, he walks up to me and I'm stretching and he gives me this big hug and he says, "You need to call your mom and tell her you're not coming home until after Christmas." So basically he was telling me I'm going to make the team.
Oh, that's great.
And so I became a starter right as a rookie and played my whole career there for the most part. And had ended up with 38 interceptions or something like that. And we were the first Super Bowl team. That was really a lot of fun, especially for Dick, and he was a great man, a great mentor, meant a lot to me. And basically from there, just one thing led to another. I started coaching. I went to San Jose State my first year after I retired in '86 and worked for Claude Gilbert. He made me the secondary coach. I had no coaching experience at all, just trusted me, gave me a job. I went in there, coached the secondary, and then I did an internship after my second year with the Kansas City Chiefs with Marty. And Tony Dungy was on that staff. Now, Tony and myself came in, we came in the same time in pro football. And we played some all-star games. That's when I met Tony. So Tony was a secondary coach. Bill Cowher was the coordinator. Bruce Arians was a running back coach. Marty was the head coach. Carl Peterson was there as a GM and stayed there for about 2 years. Then Tony leaves and Tony goes to Minnesota to become the coordinator. Bill goes to Pittsburgh. I become the secondary coach. I stay there for 5 years. Tony goes to Tampa and I go with Tony and become the assistant head coach. And Tony's grooming me to be a head coach. And then from there, I go to New York, stay there for about 5 years. And then from there, get traded. That was interesting. Get traded back to Kansas City as the head coach. And then from there, go on to worldwide leader.
There you go.
10 years, right? And,
yeah.
Then my agent at that time when I was coming out was Ray Anderson. He was the AD at Arizona State and asked me to come back. And I went back to Arizona State, had a great time there too. Mentored a lot of young men. And that was a lot of fun coaching the college athletes. And then from there, obviously now I'm back on the worldwide leader. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, to be quite honest. Long journey. A lot of people helped me along the way, and I think that's what you do when you have the ability to help other people. You try to lift them up. But I've always had this in mind. It's about the game of football and helping the players. It's always about the players because the players make the game. They really do. And I think the more you can give them information so they don't go down the wrong roads, right? That's always big for me. So I've been very fortunate, been blessed, to be quite honest.
Great story. And Herm, if you look at this, your first professional coach, notwithstanding the Don Shula experience where you had to have that conversation, was Hall of Famer Dick Vermeil. Did he teach you those elements to care for? I mean, obviously you're a caring person, but did he spend the time to get to know the players?
Yeah.
Because you had a lot of success in Philadelphia.
Yeah. And he always made this thing, that if, you got to make sure the players know you care. Because if you show them you care, then they know that it's more than just football. And it really was. I mean, that 81 team that went to the Super Bowl, that's a tight team. I mean, we still are on this text chain. We're still together as a team, and that's what he brought. It was a team that basically when he inherited that team, there was not a lot of first round picks. They had traded them all away. So Jaws came from the Rams because Dick was with the Rams as a special teams coach. So Jaws ended up coming to Philadelphia, and Roman Gabriel was the quarterback there before Dick had arrived, and Roman was the backup guy. And as I mentioned, and I should have mentioned this in the story, maybe the greatest lesson I ever learned about being a professional football player was taught to me by Roman Gabriel. Because in practice, we were at Widener College. It was about 400 yards, 500 yards, maybe a little longer than that from the locker room to the practice field. And Roman Gabriel grabbed me after my first practice and said, "Hey, you're going to walk with me every day to practice. And I'm going to talk about being a professional football player." And he actually talked to me about what it took to be a professional football player. Roman Gabriel. I'm walking to practice every day, carrying my helmet, walking with Roman Gabriel. And there's this kid that was riding a bike that had his helmet, on the steering wheel of the bike. and he's pedaling, and Roman Gabriel's talking to me, and I'm going, man, I'm walking up this hill every day, and I'm going, Roman Gabriel actually is talking to me every day as a rookie, you know.
And Coach, when you think about those moments with Roman Gabriel and Dick Vermeil and other influential, Tony Dungy that you mentioned, influential people throughout your journey, what is a common theme that they gave to you? Obviously, each is an individual person and had different roles in your life, but it seems to me that they had a common theme, and that was the care that you said and the time spent with you. But could you add any other, some anecdotes that could support that?
Well, I think, their whole deal was, even though, look, when you play in sports or even in business or in life, everyone's an independent contractor because we all want to better ourselves. And that's America. That's what you do. You're trying to better yourself. You're trying to advance yourself, right? But with that being said, you happen to be playing on a team sport. And so they made you understand no one's bigger than the team. Collectively, you got to come together if you're going to win. And everybody has a role. And I think the thing is that everyone's role is important. And, some roles are highlighted more than others. And players will have this, this persona about themselves. Well, I play this position. It really doesn't matter what position you play. It's when you walk on the field, all the players are trusting that you're going to do your job. That's a heavy deal. I've told people my claim to fame is this: you want to earn your teammates' trust. Well, how do you do that? You got to be available. The thing that means the most to me as an athlete, from high school to college to professional football, I never missed a practice and I never missed a start. I'll say it again. I never missed a practice and I never missed a start. Think about that. From high school to college to professional football. I was a varsity player as a freshman. I was a varsity player in college as a freshman, a starter. I was a rookie starter. I never missed a practice and never missed a game. Didn't miss any games. I'm going to be at practice every day, and I'm going to be available for the game. You don't have to worry about me. And that's just kind of how I went about my business. Is it hard? It's hard. Was I fortunate? Yeah. Was I lucky not to be injured? Yeah. But to me, it was my availability, knowing I didn't want to let the players down. I didn't want to let the coaches down. Jaws and myself, when we got to Philadelphia, we had this streak going, I think at about 120-something games in a row that he had started, I had started, and he got hurt. And he missed a game or two. I kept going. But that's all me and Jaws talked about. Let's just keep our streak alive. But that goes all the way back for me from high school to college. It was like, this is the deal. You have to be available to your teammates. That's how you earn their trust.
So let's look at this. Not only were you available physically, which you said you got lucky, avoiding injury, preparation, and I know your legendary workout schedule, which we can get to, which you still have right now, but you were available mentally, emotionally, and, physically by way of being at practice, right? I understand you're in the drills and such. That's a given. But you're there for your teammates in various ways. And I think people automatically go to, well, he just didn't get hurt. No, it's so much more than that. You're there to listen to younger players. You're there to interact with coaches. You're there to influence others by your behavior. That's what you're talking about, right? The whole round way of being available.
All those things. And I think, the more you play, the more knowledge you gain. And when you have knowledge, you want to give it to others, right? That's your job as a teammate. You look, even though in professional football, it's interesting. John Outlaw was a veteran corner. And there was a guy by the name of Al Clark. He was the other starter. And after about the first week, Al Clark walked up to me and said, hey, man, you're going to be a starter and you're probably going to take my job. I mean, a veteran guy tells you that. And he says, I'm going to do everything I can do to help you. And I went, really? I'm looking at this guy going, in the NFL, I tell people all the time, people don't graduate in the NFL. It's not like college where you can wait and say, well, the guy's going to graduate, I'll eventually play. No, you got to take somebody's job. And he knew after the first week, you're going to be the starter. And he says, I'm going to help you. And so I learned right then is that's what this thing's about. It's about lifting other people up. And I think when you sit in that position, look, I tell people this all the time. Everybody gets the same amount of time every day. How you allocate your time is up to you. That's a decision you get to make. But I hear people sometimes, well, I ran out of time. How'd you run out of time? Or I couldn't get there. Or I didn't. I say, well, why is that? Everybody gets the same amount of time. What is your schedule? How do you formulate your schedule every day? People struggle with that, staying on task. And things come up, right? I mean, things, but you have the same amount of time that everybody else has. It doesn't matter where you live, what you do for a living. We all get the same amount of time. How you allocate your time, to me, tells me a lot about who you are and what you're trying to achieve.
So when you became a head coach, obviously time is premium, right? Because
Yes.
you're dealing with the media, you're dealing with ownership, you're dealing with obviously players and the draft and free agency and putting together a training camp agenda, OTAs. How did you do that? When you became a head coach, it's different than a position coach and a coordinator. How did you allocate your time? And was it hard for you? Was it a challenge at the beginning when you became the Jets head coach in 2001?
Well, the first thing is that you realize is that every day you come to work, somebody got a problem, right?
Yep.
You're a problem solver, whether it's coach, whether it's player. But I think sitting with Tony and watching how he put together practice schedules, all these things, it accelerated my thinking, right? And I could always get on the phone and call Tony if I was stuck somewhere in my first year, right? Like, Tony, and Tony was great. He said, look, I'm going to give you like this blueprint. Now, this is not in stone. You can change it to how you feel. Now, a lot of things I believed in. There's some other things, maybe not, that I might've went to the left. Now, when I was with Tony relied on me as well because he made me an assistant head coach. So every decision he made in the draft, doing practice, getting a day, all those things, we would sit down and he would say, this is what I'm doing on my calendar. And I could ask him why. That was the great part. And I would ask him why. And sometimes I didn't agree. But understanding the process of all of it was very important, how he went about his business, right? So that helped me. Now, with that being said, it's easy to do it when you're the assistant head coach. When you're the head coach, it takes on a whole different, different deal. And you're right, because now you got to deal with the media, you got to deal with the players, you got to deal with the trainers, you got to deal with the equipment guys, you got to deal with the players, you got to deal with the owner, you got to deal with the GM. There's all these different, things that are pulling at you. So for me, and this is just me, I think you have to have some time for you, right? And my you time was in the morning because I knew no one would be in the building between 4 and 6. So I'd get to work at 4 o'clock in the morning and I'd work out and I'd have a notepad when I was working out and I would write things down. These are the things I have to accomplish today. These are the 5 players I need to talk to today. I need to visit with this position coach. I need to deal with the trainer with this. So I had it all charted out on this is what I'm going to do today. So basically I had a game plan for every day. Now, sometimes I always say a plan that can't be changed is a bad plan, but I had a starting point of what I wanted to accomplish and I checked the boxes off, right? And there's always something that happens, but I think that's how I started my day off.
Coach, you started to answer the question that you just beautifully articulated. You said problems come up, and that's what you're saying. So you'd be on the treadmill or whatever you were doing, and you have your notepad, and you'd write down, I have to visit with the linebacker, I got to hit the DB coach, and I have to see how the O coordinator's doing, as an example, right? but you don't know who is going to walk in your office at 10:08 that morning, and you have to be flexible and adaptable to deal with that, yet keep all your agenda items. How did you juggle that? And the way that you answer this with all your passion and the way that you approach each and every day is probably a lesson in leadership that we will all listen to. But how did you deal with that?
Well, I think you have to realize that's going to happen. If you ever go to like Las Vegas or you go to, any kind of place where there's gambling, right? You go to casinos in New Jersey, right? The one thing you realize when you walk in there, there's no clocks. There's not a clock because they don't want people to look at the clock, right? So when you walk into the building as a coach, there's no clock. You don't leave till the job's done. That's what it is. I get there at 4 in the morning. I might not get home till 12. Okay, that's just what it is. You don't leave until the work's done. Now maybe the work's done at 10. Maybe the work's done at 9. But when you walk into that building, you got to realize, look, there's going to be, as I always say, there's 5 things that are coming across my desk. They're coming from right field. And how you deal with those things, I think, is very important because, some things come at you and you have this other list of things. I have to do these. And how do I shuffle, how do I take care of these guys too, right? And that's a need like it's happening right now. When a player walks in or a coach walks in, they want an answer right now. They don't want to wait till tomorrow. They want it right now. And so you sit there and go, okay. And so this is why you try to stay ahead of it. I've always made sure my work was done so I was available to the people that needed me, right? And that's where the juggling of it comes, right? That's where the juggling of the balls come. And you have to realize that this is part of the deal, man. I signed on to do this. This is my job. The easiest part about being a coach is when the game starts. That's easy.
Right.
It's the stuff before it starts. I mean, and I always say this, I tell people this all the time. I say, when you're the coach, you get to make a lot of decisions on the sideline, but when the players walk on the field, you have no control. You have no control of what they're going to do. Zero. I don't care any sport you coach. The greatest coaches that ever coach, when those guys walk into the arena and they walk on the field, you have no control of what those guys are about to do. Now, what you do have control of is if you don't like what they're doing, when they come to the sideline, you got to fix it. They want answers. Players want answers. When they come to the sideline, they're looking at you and they're going, Coach, how do we fix this? You better have an answer.
So back to your point about time and being adaptable to such situations. So sometimes you mentioned earlier that you have to communicate with the trainers. They're not going to give you always good news. In fact, most of the time it's going to be, it was a torn ACL or this guy's going to be out for 3 weeks. Yet you might receive that information 2 minutes before a team meeting. And that's a gut punch. And that would be a gut punch for any head coach. How would you compartmentalize and go into that team meeting knowing that you had 53 players there looking at you, the assistant coaches, the practice squad guys? How did you keep the momentum and energy for the team despite the fact you just got that gut punch?
Well, the players sense what you do and how you react as a coach. And this is where your personality and your consistency as a leader comes into play. And everyone has their own way of doing things. There's no one way to do it. But the thing that has to stay consistent is how you react to things, right? And for me, as when things heated up, I became more calm. I mean, like real calm. And the players sensed that during the chaos, and I'm a guy like this. When there was no chaos, I created it because I wanted to see how we were going to function. Prime example. We were going to go scrimmage the Giants, and we were at Hofstra. And they were they were up north at a college. I forget the name of the college now. It was probably 3-hour bus ride, right? And so Coach Coughlin's the coach, and he says, Herm, he says, you guys can come up the day before and rest because practice starts at 8, and you guys can leave the night before and get up here. We can put you guys up in the dorm, and then we can get at it in the morning and, have breakfast and lunch, and then, we'll go again the second time, then you guys go home. I said, Coach, this is my first year now. I'm rookie coach. I go, nah, Coach. I said, we're going to leave in the morning. And he said, what? And I said, yeah, Coach. I'm going to get him up. We'll be there. I said, we'll get there by about 7 so we can get dressed and get ready to practice. He said, you going to do what? I said, well, Coach, I promise you. So I go to the team and tell them, I said, look, we're going to go up here and scrimmage the Giants. And the players are all excited, thinking, oh, yeah, we're going to leave tonight. We're going to leave that night, and we're going to get up there, and we'll go in the dorm and rest and get up. I said, you're going to get a wake-up call at 4:30. And they looked at me, and they said, Coach, what'd you say? 4:30. I'm blowing the horn, and I'm waking everybody up 4:30. We're going to get on the bus. I said, you can bring your pillows. You can do whatever you want. You can sleep on the bus, but we're going to catch the bus, and we're going to drive up there, and then we're going to go to practice. You talking about some guys looking around the room. They were looking around this room going, what did he just do? Coach ain't kidding. Sure enough, the air horn goes off. These guys are getting up, and all of a sudden they're going, you got to be kidding me. They're coming out with their pillows. They get on the bus. We drive up there to Albany, I think it was. And we get there and we get into the gym and we're getting dressed and we go on the field. And before we go on the field, I told the players, I said, let me tell you guys something. I said, now, these Giants, they know you're tired. They're going to wear you guys out today. It wasn't even fair. It wasn't even fair. We wore the Giants out. Got into a little bit of an altercation the second practice, and we had to shut it down. But what I was doing basically was testing the players, right? I was testing to see if they could deal with this. Deal with some circumstances that come up, like in life, right? What if your plane's late going on a road trip and you don't get to the hotel till 1 o'clock in the morning and it's a 1 o'clock kickoff? So I was creating some chaos. I wanted to see how they were going to handle it and the coach was going to handle it. And they passed with flying colors. So sometimes you got to do that just to see how people are going to react, because the coaches didn't even know. They were like, Coach, 4:30. I said, 4:30. We're leaving at 4:30. And they looked at me like, Coach, you got to be kidding. No, I'm not. And I'm a rookie coach. I said, no, I'm not kidding. We're going. And when we did that, you'd be surprised. When we got back on that bus and we left coming back to New York, the players were so excited and so happy about what they accomplished, because I don't even think they thought they could do this. But it was like, this is what we're about to do. Right?
Right. You're creating edge and adversity, and they overcame it. And like you said, on the bus ride back, they were very proud of themselves. Let's talk about a couple of those players. Coach, I don't want to keep you too much longer. Anthony Becht, Vinny Testaverde, Wayne Corbett, Curtis Martin, Eric Coleman, Chad Pennington.
I got a picture. Look, let's see if I can show you this. I got a picture. Can you see that right there?
Yeah.
That's 10 right there.
Yes, it is.
Right? That's my guy. That's 10 now.
That's beautiful.
That's my guy, 10, man.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, he's the best. He was the best. I tell you what, he was fun to coach. Boy, we still have a relationship. We still talk. A lot of those guys I still talk to.
I told you before coming on that Eric Coleman and Anthony Becht brought your name up as an impactful person in their lives on this very podcast series here. So you've made an impact. Obviously, look at your game balls behind you. You've made a tremendous impact on a lot of athletes and your coworkers at ESPN. How much pride do you take in that throughout your career?
A lot, because I think at the end, you want people to remember you by this, is that you provided them some information and you provided them a platform to be successful. You know, your success is about the other people's success, really, if you're going to have any success in life. It's about the people you lift up and give opportunities to. And I was given opportunities in my life by a lot of people. And it's about giving back, especially to players. Because I've always looked at myself this way. I'm a player first. And when I thought about doing things, I always thought through a player's eyes. What do you do? If I was a player and asked a player to do this, what would they think, right? You mentioned Anthony Beck. I mean, I watch him now on television. He's a coach. And I smile, you know, because I remember him as a player, right? And now he's a coach. He's coaching in, you know, in the XFL, and, you know, his team's playing well. They're 3-1. And I watch these guys after they have left their fathers, their husbands, some of them go into the coaching profession, which I love, because when they're playing, they don't think about that. They don't think about they're going to be a coach. And now some of these guys have become coaches. So, you know, I enjoyed being with my players, whether they were the star or whether they were the walk-on guy. You know, they were a part of the team. And I spent time with all of them, you know, and I always had time for every guy. And look, players know this. And I used to tell players this all the time. My mission is this. I'm not going to allow you to waste your talent because it's a gift. I can't give you talent. God gives you talent. What I can do is give you information. Now, what you do with that information, that's on you. But I can't give you talent. And, you know, I tell them this. I say, you know, you got to understand something here now. This life of being a professional football, it's a short life. It's not your whole life. It's a short life. But you'll learn a lot about life through football with all the things that happen, right? It's about trusting people, trusting your teammates, doing things together as this team. And I said, you know, you'll leave here, if you do it right, better for it. We'll all be better for it, right? And you got, you know, the hardest thing, you got to cut players sometimes. You know, some players don't start and they want to start. All these feelings and emotion players go to, because, you know, when you're a professional athlete, you're always on edge because you never know. You know, it's week to week. It's day to day. And you live that way. And I think you got to create an environment where players are relaxed. They're relaxed but alert. And they feel comfortable in the environment. That's the environment I try to create. I've always said this. There's two ways you can coach. You can give them correction or you can give them direction. I was a believer that you always give people direction. Not correction, direction. I always want to give them direction, not correction. I'm going to give you some direction, right? And so I think how you word things to players sometimes is very important. Saying the same thing, you know, standards. Standards. These are the standards, not the rules. These are the standards, right? You can say the same thing, but you use a different word, and a player wants to achieve something when you say standards, right? When you say standards to somebody, you go, oh. When you say rules, it's like, same thing, just wordplay.
You were very good at that. Coach, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Hopefully we've said some things and we've covered some information that that people can use. I do know this. When you step in to become a leader, you got to realize that the thing that you have to do the most, they respect your title, but you got to earn their trust. They respect the title, but the person behind the title has to earn their trust. And it's about being consistent in doing this. And I've said this numerous times. You treat everyone fair, but you can't treat everyone the same. You just can't. That's how life works.
That's right.
Curtis Martin was an all-pro player. A rookie running back's not going to get treated like Curtis Martin, right? I know Curtis Martin. You got to earn what Curtis Martin has done, then you'll be treated like Curtis Martin. That's how it works in life. You know, the worst thing a coach can say, I'm going to treat everyone the same. The players look at you and go, no, coach, you ain't doing that. And they're right, because you're not going to do that. You treat everyone fairly, but you can't treat everyone the same. You just can't.
And that's business, football, or anything, right? It's beautiful.
That's life. That's how it works.
Yes. Coach, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you.
All righty. Take care.
All right, you too.
And we thank Coach Edwards very much for being on the show. Let's look at our takeaways. Number one, respect the title, but earn the trust. That's right. You could be the head coach, the CEO, or the boss per se, but you have to earn the players, the staff, everyone's trust. In addition, treat everyone fairly, but not the same. It's not realistic as a leader to treat everyone the same. Treat them fairly, as Coach said. And he made the comparison between a rookie running back and Hall of Famer Curtis Martin. They're not the same. I hope you enjoyed this conversation like I did. For our podcast producer, Paul Salazar, I am your host, Chris Gargano. Give us a subscribe, follow us, like us, and leave us a comment. You know we would appreciate it. We will see you next week, everyone. Have a great week, and we will have another fantastic guest for you on Keep the Line Moving.
We thank you for listening to Keep the Line Moving. We would love it if you subscribed or left a review. For more podcast episodes, check out our YouTube page. If you'd like to work with the Gargano Leadership Group, check out our website. This has been a GLG production, copyright 2023. For our podcast producer, Paul Salazar, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal. Have a great week, everyone.